We're back. This will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, part 6 of the playthrough. We're gonna finish Sandcastles, then we will click and then Summer Ended, and then the next video will be the continuation of step 1. So without further ado, let's go. Cove wasn't able to do many things that summer. When you, him, and Shiloh sat out on the shoreline one bright morning, you could tell he wanted to be in the water, but there was no way he'd be swimming anytime soon, not with his cast. The waves washed a single shell to shore, glittering in blue, another reminder of the places he couldn't go. From what you learned about Cove's old life so far, in tiny pieces and fragments, you could tell that he'd do anything to be able to get the cast off. Even cut it off himself if he could. As somebody who broke their arm and had to wear a cast, they are very annoying, just because of how bulky they are. Your thought about how his summer last year must have been totally different from this, with his old home and his mom and dad. But now he was here, with you and Shiloh and Lizzie and everyone else, and he couldn't even go in the sea. This town wasn't bad, it had all your favorite things in it, but sitting there on the same beach you'd grown up on, you could understand that not everybody else felt the same way about Sunset Bird as you did. You watched him from the corner of your eye quietly, and he finally said aloud what you had been pondering. I wish I could go in. The water? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You're gonna be able to do it soon. Cove only sighed in response. Apparently soon wasn't soon enough. It's so pretty. The ocean. And huge. There could be anything out there, like mermaids. Yep, I keep forgetting we're kids, so yes. I wish you didn't have a cast. I really don't care. Swing might be fun if we could. I'm fine here on land. Mermaids ain't real. What the hell, dude? Some of these answers for being a kid, like if I wanted to be a dick in this playthrough, I could be. I wish you didn't have a cast. Yeah. Swimming might be fun if we could. Like, that's what I'm gonna pick. But it's not like there's anything we can do about it. Obviously not interested in hearing much more of your input on the situation, Cove turned back to the water. But as he looked away, something about Shiloh's slow, careful movements caught his eye. Hey, are you building a sandcastle? Sort of, I was only playing around while you were talking. I'm listening. Maybe I could too, I've only made big piles before. It's really nothing special, I'm sure you'll be good at it right away. Well, how do you do it then? Shiloh's cheeks lit up. You could tell he was a little bit uncomfortable to have Cove's expectant stare on him. I'll play too. I love making sand stuff. I've never really made one before. There's nothing else to do. I've actually never really made one in real life. Like, I understand the concept, but I've never made one. Okay. He put his hands back to his seashell and sand and nodded. I don't do a lot. Here's how I like to get a house started. Shiloh, focusing more intently than you'd ever seen him, guided the two of you through his process. It didn't take long for the three of you to each have humble structures prepared. That's all, kind of. You can do anything now, like make it bigger, add some seashells, carve a pretty pattern. I bet you'll have great ideas. Okay. I'm gonna make it bigger. Mine is gonna be a real castle. Cool, this is gonna be a house. Looking at the base of your sandcastle, you decided to make a house, a castle, a mansion. A castle. Like, if I'm gonna be playing in the sand and getting dirty, I want a big-ass castle. Looking at the base of your sandcastle, you decided to build a fancy castle. The better part of the next hour was spent focusing on your own work. The boys were the same. Even Shiloh didn't speak as many peeks at everyone. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Even Shiloh didn't sneak as many peeks at everyone else as he usually did. You finished shaping before either of them did, glancing up from what you'd built. It seems you got done so fast because they already searched around for extra decorations. Shiloh had grabbed most of the really interesting stuff, and Cove had a lot of the shells, but there were still options. The first thing you reached for was a red bottle cap, blue seashell. Ooh, sea glass is actually really pretty. We'll grab the sea glass. It was the best fit for your castle, you decided. It was see-through and sparkly. and you displayed it front and center, making it a headline feature of your whole thing. Pleased with your results, you finally took a proper look around that wasn't focused on the sand itself. Both Cove and Shiloh seemed super immersed still. You knew you could probably sneak a peek at either one's work. Cove, Shiloh. I feel like this is setting myself up. Whoa, hold on, go away. Clicked the wrong button, I shouldn't have. I feel like the FOMO would get to me, so I'm not gonna look. You watched some clouds go by. The silence then broke. What's on top of yours, Shiloh? You peeked closer, discovered something shiny sticking out of Shiloh's sand chimney. Oh, it's just a gum wrapper. It looks like smoke. Neat. It's good, that's smart. Yeah, that is super smart. You should be an architect. You'd be good at it. Shiloh smiled without a word. And that was that for the current topic. Can I see what you did? Sure. He scooted just a bit nearer and began surveying your work. The castle you built was pretty impressive, all things considered. It had archways, tall walls, and even a little moat circling it. You'd probably feel safe living there. Maybe your moms were the queens. Shiloh quickly decided to jump in the new conversation. What did you do? It's a castle. Shiloh didn't look so happy anymore. You both build castles? Yeah. That's neat how you guys match. It's too bad we didn't all do it. Next time we should. Wouldn't that be boring? If something is the only one of that thing, that makes it special. Yeah, for sandcastles and stuff. People too. My dad always says how everybody is their own man, a real individual. I don't think I'm very special. Shiloh, please. Why not? Nobody else is you. Shiloh simply shook his head. Bro, Shiloh, why do you have such low self-esteem, my guy? Are you good? I'm not different. A beat passed between the two. Cove then looked down at his own work again. Okay. He didn't seem to be bothered leaving the disagreement hanging there. Cove had other things on his mind. My dad tried to get me to make sandcastles the first time we came to this beach. I didn't want to. Cove trailed off. Again, there was another moment of silence. Shiloh shifted and opened his mouth to say something, but Cove spoke up before he could. You didn't think he noticed that Shiloh was going to talk. Hey, do you know what happened when your moms met my dad, Hella? Cocked your head thinking about it briefly. No, your dad was just sitting out on my front porch like a weirdo. I wasn't there, they didn't tell me. I just remember what happened when I met your dad. Mr. Holden had been a weird stranger then. Well, he was still kind of strange. No other parent acted like him, but you knew him better at this point. Now that you thought about it, it made a lot of sense that Cove's dad talked to him about people being unique. You were pulled from your thoughts when Cove continued. Oh, well, I was there. I don't think my mom has met your dad, says Shiloh. Shiloh. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she hasn't. Hella's parents and my dad met the same day I met her. I'm gonna say what happened. Shiloh frowned to himself, ducking his head. His hat cast a shadow over his face. You could still tell he was upset at not being included in Cove's choice of topic. That was kind of boring for him, though giving people their own turn to say the things they want is important too. That is true. I think Shiloh wants to talk too. Huh? We were talking, just not right now. I'm talking to you. He can listen. Shiloh's expression barely flickered at the words. He still looked put off. Cove continued like the interruption hadn't happened. He was determined to tell the tale. When we moved here, we didn't bring a lot of things with us, only some stuff that would fit in Dad's car. We didn't even get a moving truck. I sat in there while Dad brought it all inside. I didn't want to get out because I knew Dad would make me look around the new house. I really didn't want to do that. His lips twisted into a frown as he recalled that. Then I saw your moms. They were in a car too and stopped at your house. I guess they were coming back from somewhere or something. My dad noticed. He waved his hand, then went over to the front of your house where he started talking to them. I don't know what they said, I couldn't hear it, but he couldn't see me anymore since he was looking the other way. So I opened the car door and left. I wanted to get away and went behind the house. I found those hills there, the ones where we met for the first time. Cove nodded, then stared at you. You stared back. He didn't go on to say anything more. What, that's all you wanted to say? Cove's brow wrinkled like he didn't understand why you were surprised. That's all that happened. Okay, why did you want to tell that story if nothing happened? You gotta get better at telling stories. This is a pretty bad story. Thanks for telling me. I guess thanks for telling me. I feel like, okay, his parents, Cove's parents might be divorced. Shiloh's parents, something's definitely going on with them, but Shiloh is so unbelievably, painfully, awkwardly shy. My guy, we need to get you better at talking. You're welcome. Even if not much happened, you weren't going to complain about knowing the story. Shiloh's mouth twisted into a scowl of disbelief, but he said nothing. Why'd you bring that up anyway? There was a slight shrug of Cove's shoulders. I was thinking about it because of the sandcastle. It made me remember when I moved to here. Dad showed me the beach first before we went back to the car to unpack. He was really excited about it. I could talk. He was really excited about it for some reason. Cove's brows furrowed a little bit more as he quietly raked his hands through the sand. I get it. You thought maybe Mr. Holden wasn't that excited about the beach and was instead hoping Cove might be. But the line of conversation had come to its end. Even Cove was done with it. Some other topic had popped into his head. Shiloh fidgeting uncomfortably in the sand had made Cove aware of his presence again. They looked at each other, and you could only wonder what this might be about. Hey, Shiloh. Yeah? Why are you always turning so red, even when nothing is happening? Clearly startled, he jerked back. Neither you or Shiloh had expected that to be how he got included in the conversation again. I don't know, I guess. Okay, it's kind of weird. Shiloh's eyes were wide with embarrassment and his lips twitched, and he was blushing even harder than before. Jesus Christ, Shiloh is... I think Shiloh has a form of social anxiety, where he's just incredibly, incredibly shy. Maybe it wasn't only this, perhaps it was simply the last straw, but it was a big deal to Shiloh, a huge deal. He didn't just look sad, he seemed almost panicked. You weren't sure if he was about to cry or run away or what, but you soon got an answer. Why do you wear glasses? Most kids don't wear glasses, and nobody is named Cove. Shiloh coming out with the big guns. Who asked you to come? It was probably just your dad bugging Hella's family some more. Because you don't have anyone else who will ever play with you. Cove blinked. Tension on the beach was suddenly uncomfortable in a way you didn't know how to move past. It didn't seem like the kind of thing he'd get upset about, though you hadn't even known what kind of things would bother Shiloh. I'm sure. I'm sorry. Me too, I was just wondering. Hey, let's build another sandcastle. You tried to play on your own. Are we gonna build more? Yeah, this is the time to see myself out of this conversation. I'm gonna go play with the sand. You picked up some sand and turned it over in your hands. There didn't seem to be much you could do to stop the fight, and you weren't sure what to do with yourself. Cove looked over at what you were doing and started building his own set of walls. Shiloh took a breath before kneeling back down to his own patch of sand. It seemed they both decided to try playing again. You were glad for that. You all went back to making more sand buildings, but the whole mood had changed. Shiloh's cheeriness was clearly gone, and Cove looked as confused as ever about why the other boy had blown up. Cove, you're kind of an asshole. The air stayed uncomfortable the rest of the afternoon, right up to the moment that Shiloh's mom appeared at the beach to take him home. Cove and Shiloh had mostly followed your lead and barely said a word. His mom standing behind him, even Shiloh's goodbye had been quiet, quite friendly, cheerful, but noticeably quiet. But with Shiloh gone and the sun going down, you knew it was time for you and Cove to head to your own houses, so you led the way to the path back home. The walk home was quiet. You passed by familiar landmarks, shoes thumping against the sidewalk in near perfect unison. Oh, whoa. I don't know what I did, but I did it. Okay, where was I? Perfect unison. Cove was clearly caught up in thinking about something. Yo, what are you thinking, buddy? You didn't want to leave it hanging in the air, so you decided to just ask. Why are you making that face? Oh, I was just wondering. He fell silent again for a few more seconds, then sighed. Why'd Shiloh act like that when I said he was all red a lot? You were being rude. Yeah, no shit. He's just being a baby. You shouldn't make fun of him. I don't know, it's just Shiloh. He gets embarrassed. You tried to Cove. You were being rude to him. No, I wasn't. It looked like that to me, and it wasn't just saying that one thing. You're not very nice to Shiloh. I didn't mean it like that. Shiloh was kind of weird to talk to. See, that is kind of rude. I guess I can get it, why he would do that. Sometimes I get really mad too. Despite seemingly coming to a conclusion, Cove's mood was still sour. Hey, was Shiloh telling the truth? Huh? His gaze left yours as he dug the sole of his shoe into the ground. He looked oddly vulnerable for a second. Does my dad make you hang out with me? I know he talks to your moms about that a lot. An uncomfortable weight settled in your chest at the question. You liked spending time with Cove. You didn't even have to think hard about it. You knew you did. But you couldn't help feeling guilty. Cove still didn't know what happened when you met Mr. Holden. Nobody's making me spend time with you. Your dad does do stuff, so you'll hang out with my family, but Shiloh shouldn't have said that. You decided to tell him about how his dad offered you money. I feel like this was a really important thing to say in our conversation of, yeah, your dad did offer me money, but I declined it because that's weird. Well, I remember how I talked to you about how our parents met and I didn't know what happened. Yeah. I kind of had something happen that you didn't know about when I met your dad. As you struggled to find the right words, Cove looked at you passively. You met his gaze even though your stomach twisted itself into knots. I was walking home and your dad was sitting in front of the house. It must have been after you ran away. My moms weren't there either. I think they were looking for you. Your dad saw me. He got up and came over. Mr. Holden told me that he just moved into the house next to mine. Cove was still listening, his expression as plain as before. You paused for a moment, wondering if you should really keep going. Yeah, I'm just telling the full story. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Even if it was supposed to be a secret, you thought Cove should still know. Your dad said he'd give me $20 if I became friends with you. Cove was so still you thought he hadn't heard you. Then his eyes widened, his mouth fell open, but no sound left him. Silence stretched between you, so tense that it was almost tangible. You shifted from one foot to another, and then your hands tensed up. Hey, say something. Instead of speaking, he closed his mouth, his eyebrows bent up, crinkling his forehead. He looked more sad than surprised now. He was going to cry. You were certain of it. I didn't take it. The money. I didn't want it. Honest. Cove raised his hands and brought them up under his glasses, his fingers pressed over his eyes, hiding them from your sight. Then right in the middle of the street, the tears began to fall. Oh, I have a feeling this is a common occurrence. That's not good. His shoulders shook with the force of his sobs. You could glimpse wetness through the cracks of his fingers slipping down his cheeks. You shouldn't cry because of that. You stepped closer, you placed your hand on his head, you touched his shoulder, you stayed by. Human empathy and compassion is gonna get me a long way in this game, I feel like. Hey buddy, are you good? Awkwardly, you reached over and rested a hand on his shoulder, but Cove shook his body from side to side, rejecting your presence. Go away. You flinched at the shout. As you stood there listening to him cry, you felt uncomfortable over the scene he was making, concerned for him, regret for telling him about the money, bad about everything. Yeah, because I feel like now, even though I told him the truth, now he's calling into question everything. I feel like this is going to end up with a parental fight, and you know what? Never mind. I regret telling him about the money. Why did you open your big mouth? Oh, okay. I clicked too soon. Cove continued to weep with his face covered by his hands. Worse, his voice raised in volume. You were frozen in place. The situation was awful and you kept feeling worse every second. Please don't cry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You spoke earnestly. It was all you could do and it wasn't enough. You heard a door opening and you flinched, expecting to see one of the mean old grandparents preparing themselves to yell at you. At this hour, most people weren't around, either because they were working or down in the town, but the grandparents rarely left the house, except to complain at children making noise in the street. You didn't want Cove to have to deal with that right now. You tried to come up with something you could do for him. For the situation. For anything. Oh, I got really sleepy there for a second. But the door that stood open now didn't belong to the grandparents. To your utter surprise and relief, it was Cove's own. His dad was already home. As he peeked out his door, Mr. Holden momentarily looked unsure. Perhaps he had suspicions on the noise outside, but he wasn't entirely positive, though a kid crying is pretty distinct and there aren't a lot of kids. Maybe he didn't want to believe something might be wrong with his son. His face fell as he spotted the source of the commotion. It was pained and it was scared, and it reminded you of the one he'd worn the first night you'd met Cove. Mr. Holden didn't go down the steps in front of his house. He just jumped right over them and stumbled into a run. He skid to a stop before Cove, bent down on one knee, and then solidly cupped Cove's teary face with his hands. Whew. This is a lot more reading than I was expecting to do, but...
What's wrong?
What's wrong? Are you hurt anywhere? Cove continued to cry, unable or unwilling to cough out an explanation. Not taking his hands from Cove, Mr. Holden turned to you for an explanation, his eyes wide and imploring. Cove asked if you'd made me hang out with him. I just told him the truth. He tried to give me money. As you spoke, Mr. Holden's chest rose while he inhaled a deep, shaky breath, culminating in a gasp at your final words. Why? Why would you... He clamped his mouth shut, shaking his head. His face his crying son again. No, it's my fault. I shouldn't have done something like that in the first place. He cast his eyes down, sighing. Then, when he next spoke, it wasn't part of a conversation anymore. It was just barely loud enough for you to catch his words. Hella's only a kid. Yeah, dude, I'm 8 in this fucking scenario. Tears were still streaming down Cove's face. Smiling sadly, Mr. Holden wiped Cove's cheek with a thumb. He furrowed his brows and looked at the ground. When he next glanced up, his mouth was set with determination. Mr. Holden finally took his hands off Cove. He reached for his wallet. Confused, you stared at the little triangle that all adults seemed to carry in some shape or form. It had been the source of all these problems. You were sure that Cove wouldn't want to be reminded of it right now. Mr. Holden was clearly of a different mind to you. He inexplicably retrieved another $20 bill, rolled it up, and raised it to Cove's face. Cove's eyes were hidden behind tightly clamped fingers, so Mr. Holden poked Cove's nose with the bill. Cove peeked between his hands and grunted as he saw what he had been prodded with. Even if it was surrounded by sobs, you were glad that something else had finally left Cove's mouth. Hey Cove, can you stop crying? I'll give you cash if you do. Why is money your go-to, dude? Cove dropped his hands from his face. It had already been red and wet with tears, but now his features were scrunched up at a scowl. Not for the first time, you questioned Mr. Holden's tactics. Yeah, I'm questioning his tactics too. He had to use 2 hands, but Cove firmly shoved his dad's own hands away. But Mr. Holden just chuckled at Cove's reaction and tossed the money aside. It unfurled and it flew through the air, rising before slowly drifting to the ground. Mr. Holden took Cove's outstretched wrist and lowered them to Cove's side, stopping him from hiding his face once again. You have such beautiful hair, my guy. Like, I know that is a weird tangent, but look at, he's got such immaculate hair. This is definitely Anime Land, because how does a blonde get a green-haired kid? Anyway. Cove's dad clearly wasn't going to let go. Huffing, Cove turned his whole head away, tears continuing to roll down his cheeks as he glanced at the ground. You can buy a lot of cool things with that, but it can't do everything, can it? Cove didn't respond, not even to look at his father. Mr. Holden continued. Your old dad likes to make things nice for you with the money he earns, but you're smart. You know that I haven't really done anything.
I'm sorry.
I still make you sad and upset, just like right now. I'm sorry. Cove sniffed, the harsh line of his brows mellowing. Mr. Holden squeezed Cove's hands as he continued. Hella is smart too, right? Aw, thanks, guy. Mr. Holden spoke in a soft, encouraging tone, and Cove continued to calm. You have nothing to worry about, except for me. Mr. Holden chuckled. Cove pressed his lips together, mulling over his father's words, though the stream of tears had eased. Drops still bubbled in his eyes and threatened to spill out. I love you, son, so much, more than anybody else. Sometimes that makes me a little too hasty to see you happy, and I make it all worse. I really am sorry. Scrunching his eyes tight, Cove nodded. When his eyes opened again, they were red and glossy, but there were no tears left on the precipice of his lower lashes. Aside from the occasional sniff, he was mostly back to his usual self. He swallowed. Okay. Though Cove had pursued to echo Mr. Holden's exact words, that sentiment seemed to be enough for his dad. I think this is the first time I've ever heard this man also call Cove his son instead of boy, so we're learning all kinds of stuff. He moved his hand up under Cove's armpits and hoisted Cove high into the air with a grin. Cove's hands flew to his glasses, holding them back from falling off. Cove's lips were shut tight, all betrayed by the telltale smile in his eyes, like that he was trying to hide. Mr. Holden laughed, lowering Cove so that he was securely pinned against his chest. Cove looked away, face angled to the ground. Now that his dad could no longer see him, he was allowing himself a smile. Mr. Holden might have missed it, but you didn't. Cove wiggled, pushing a hand against his dad's shoulders. Can I go back down now? Yeah. Mr. Holden. You know what? I feel like Holden is just such a weird last name. Like, I've heard it before, but it just doesn't register in my mind as being, like, a last name. It barely registers as being a first name. It's just a thing. Like, it is just a sentence. Like, it's part of the syntax that skips my brain for some reason. I don't know why. Mr. Holden set Cove gently on the ground, waiting until his feet found their footing before releasing him entirely. I have to do something. Wait here. As Cove wandered away, Mr. Holden's gaze stuck to him like glue. You sighed, eyes downcast. You felt weird that you'd only been able to stand there while the event unfolded. You weren't able to fix it. How come I couldn't make him feel better? Don't worry about it, please. We don't need another tragedy today. It's a tragedy you caused. He winked, and you weren't impressed. Hey, I mean that. The first part, anyway. There's only so much you can do to try fixing someone else's mistake. He smiled sincerely at you. You've done plenty for Cove. Just the fact that you were honest with him when his own dad wasn't proves it. Thanks for being such a good kid. I hope you'll keep spending time with the boy. Again, we're back to the boy. He is your son, is he not? As though the sound of his name summoned him, Cove returned, clutching the bill his dad had cast aside earlier. You cocked your head, and Cove's dad raised his eyebrow. Cove looked at the crumpled note, then walked over and held it out to you. I stopped crying, but I don't want this. You can have it. He gave you a small smile. Behind him, Mr. Holden was still watching Cove closely, clearly relieved. You shared the feeling Cove was making peace with the deal that happened behind his back. We're friends, dude. I'm not going to take your money. Shaking your head, pushed the note back to Cove. I don't need it. But I don't want it. You were at a stalemate. Mr. Holden hummed thoughtfully. Tapping his head, he gazed up at the wide sky as he pretended to give the conundrum serious consideration. I know. He plucked the bill from Cove and tore it in two. You and Cove gasped. Dad, we can't do anything with it now. True, it won't work at the store like this, but now you can split it. Crouching down, he held out the pieces to you and Cove. You both looked at the two halves. Neither of you reached for them. It still has value as a keepsake, a memory, and that's one of the most valuable things you can use money on. Sir, we can literally tape this. As somebody who used to work at, respectively, a bank and also, like, a fast food restaurant, as long as it's still able to be processed, you can still use it. That sounds pretty good, huh? Maybe I'm getting smarter. Wordlessly, Cove stretched out a hand and took his half. You took yours, running a finger along the jagged edge of the bill. It was cool to think that no other note would share this exact same feature, the precise peaks and throws of the tear, except for Cove's, which would bear them in reverse. It did feel like there was value left in it. Mr. Holden stood up, stretching his arms out casually. Well then, it's about time for dinner. Me and the Rugrat need to be going in. You probably should too. I bet your moms want to see you. Alright? Bye.
Thanks very much.
Have a good night, and thanks, Helen. Father and son waved at you as you turned and dashed back home, the note clenched tightly in your hand. You felt lighter. That was such a weird episode. But whatever. We have done all the memories, or the moments, and then summer ended. Yes, we're moving to the next step. Okay, we're gonna save here, which will literally pick us right back up at this spot, and that'll be the next episode of summer ending, and we'll call it good. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. Bye!